Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Mia, and I'm really excited to have my friend Jen Hampton here with us today. Hi, Jen. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really excited to see where our conversation goes because it's our last one was amazing. So I'm excited for this one.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved that. Yeah, and if you guys didn't see it, we're both on Instagram and we did an Instagram live last week and it was so fun and we kind of just um talked about kind of all the things happening ascension and on the world stage. So definitely I can put that in the notes below if you want to check that out too. But I wanted to talk to you, Jen, here today just to kind of like well, first I'll just intro you a little bit and then we can gonna get into it. So Jen is, for one, Jen's a part of our frequency Healy family, which is really awesome. And I feel like that's just so nice because it's such a high vibe community, at least everyone I'm connected to. And it's like everybody who has that kind of that, grounding anchor point in understanding frequency and understanding what that means and how energy really works into the world. So it's immediately just like a beautiful point of connection. And Jen is a medium and she guides people to speak with their higher self and she does one-on-one sessions. And I want to hand it over to you, Jen, to just maybe share a little bit of what you do and your story because I know you're going to say it way better than me.
Well, thank you. Okay, let's see. Geez, I'm going to try to condense it as much as possible. Um, yes, I am a medium. I was a hairstylist for almost 20 years. And but really during COVID was really like, okay, this isn't working for me anymore. So I really, I stepped into my mediumship. I was actually practicing my mediumship while I was still at work, which was crazy because I would do people's hair and I would get like
Yeah.
intuitive hits and I was like, oh my God, like it was pretty
That's
intense.
so interesting because it's so, I mean, it's such an, intimate relationship. So it makes a lot of sense.
It
You're just
was, it
dropping.
was, yeah, it was wild. Like I'd be doing someone's hair and their grandfather would come in, or I even had somebody in the waiting room and their husband came in who had passed and
Wow.
really wild
Wow.
stories. And it was amazing, but I ended up leaving. And so now, yes, that's my primary is my mediumship. And
Love
so I
that.
offer mediumship readings where we kind of look at your life and we can also connect with loved ones or guides. And then I also have started offering embodiment sessions, which as I've been on my journey, um,
Mhm.
it was really important for me it just felt like spirit was like, everybody needs to get back into themselves, like really
Mhm.
authenticity. And Mia, you and I have talked about sovereignty, but how can we really claim our sovereignty if we aren't able to authentically be ourselves? And most of us don't know ourselves. So the embodiment sessions are this really beautiful hour-and-a-half session that gives you a deeper look into who you are, but then it also gives you tools for your toolbox to continue the journey on your own. And so, yeah, that's what I do.
I love that. Yeah, that's like so important. And this has kind of been coming in for me this week. I just have been reflecting on it. Like if because, there'll be people that say to me like, how are you connect they don't really have they feel like they're not connecting with people in their soul family yet or on their wavelength or to be having the kind of conversations we're having, right? Or what I'm sharing on Instagram, things like that. And I'll always ask, well, are you kind of, in essence, are you letting yourself be who you are in the world? And are you being authentic? And also, of course, it's like we've all been so blocked from being that. So it's not in any judgment sort of way. Like we're all on kind of that journey to a lesser or bigger degree right now. But I'll ask, like, are you saying what you really think when people ask you think what's going on about what's going on in the world or in your life about spirituality, whatever it is, because I feel like the more that we're and this isn't I hadn't thought about it this way really before, but the more authentic we are and the more we actually the truer we are to who we really are in all ways, like basically being like unapologetically ourselves, saying what we think, even if we think, you can say it nicely, but not holding back because we think, oh, they might think it's dumb, or they might not agree, or I don't want to hurt their feelings. That the more we do that, that we're magnetizing not only like our energetically, like our people that we're actually going to have real connections with and friendships with and feel that resonance with, but we're also magnetizing like the truth, because it's like we're being in that frequency of trueness or authenticity. It's like that's when you start to get like just really, really, really in flow with like the information that I would consider the truth, and that just coming in from everywhere. Because sometimes people ask me like, well, how do you find these things? And I'm like, I don't even know at this point. It feels like it's like intuitive. It feels like it's my bloodline DNA guidance, like spirit guidance from the ancestors. I'll pull one thing up on my phone and it'll be like, oh, I've been wondering about that. There, that information is, it just comes from everywhere. And I feel like that is like, actually, I'm seeing now that I'm just more and more strong in who I am. And it's that frequency. So then it all comes in. I don't know. Does that make sense?
100%. I just wrote something today where I was like, I was looking at the shape of like a conch shell and like the spiral. And if you think about it, like our journey is a spiral. You know what I mean? Like a
It
spiritual
is.
journey is a spiral. And so our frequency might start down here, right? Which means we have certain people, certain experiences, but it's really about, it's not the destination, it's really the journey. So the more you step into your authenticity, the more that and it is a journey. It's not one door that you walk through and bam, you're just like, oh, hello. It's a never ending, like, oh my God, there's another door. There's another opportunity for me to like sink in even more to who I am. And the more we do that, the higher you go in the spiral, which means the higher your frequency, which means
Mhm.
the more connected you are with the universe and the magic and what you would call like synchronicities. Like things just drop
Yeah.
into your field because your frequency is there. And I think there's a difference. I think when we're stagnant, it's like we have a hard time seeing the magic of the world. But if we're
Yeah.
open and we keep wanting to open the doors and we just keep asking questions, I think you get there. I don't want to say faster, but kind of faster, like you travel up, your frequencies are changing and things just drop in faster, where it's almost like a way of living, it's that
Mhm.
communication. So that 100% makes sense to me. And you're right, I don't think that it happens without us really stepping into who we are, you know
Yeah.
um and that was a big step for me. I remember like doing like my career was hair, you know, Redken
Mhm.
color. Like I know, like, oh, you want 7NN? Okay, well, I'm gonna have to put a little bit of 7NA in there so it doesn't get too warm because we need it to be neutral. And like I knew, I just had the eye for it. That was my life, But the
Yeah.
more I went up on the spiral, I was like, oh my God. Okay, so we're talking about color, but your Uncle Bob is here. And, so things just started.
Just was like, okay, I'm spiraling out of this. Yeah, exactly. You got bounced
Yes.
out of it vibrationally, and that's what's so cool. And I'm sure we those of us that really kind of are having this conversation, it's like that's what for so many COVID was. It was like a real opportunity to like go through the discomfort of like letting ourselves be bounced out of whatever was no longer working. And it feels like now we're in another portal of that shift for anybody who didn't really like let happen during COVID. Because it's like for you, it's like I don't know if that was uncomfortable. I mean, usually change is uncomfortable when we're changing from some sort of certain job or like identity life, right? But then like how much more amazing is it to actually feel once we're through that portal of change, be uncomfortable as it might be, because now like look, you're just free flowing with that. You're getting to like share that openly instead of like I don't know. Like, but also like, did you find that a lot of people you were working with were open to that, or did you ask them, or were you kind of like hiding that, or how was that flowing with your old
I
with
think
that?
it was a little bit of a battle. Like,
Mhm.
I was open with some. I was very lucky, because I really did have again, I think because of the frequency, I really had wonderful clients. I had wonderful, wonderful people in my life.
Yeah.
And really, like, I'm like, am I really doing this for hair? Like, is this what I'm doing this for? But it was really wonderful people. So I did feel that I could confide in a lot of them. But yeah, some of them I was like, you're not deserving of my full essence kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're not deserving of me being vulnerable in that way. Um, but then, yeah, I mean, I really started to step into it. And I think a lot of people at work that they were like, I don't know how much longer she's going to be here.
I
And
feel.
yeah, and I left for
Mhm.
many, it was a very layered thing. It wasn't just one thing, but it was, COVID. Before COVID happened, it was scary, right? We just didn't know. I had a sick stepmother, and we were just all concerned. Like, we wanted to make sure that everybody was going to be okay. But
Mhm.
when I channeled, basically I got the information, get very comfortable being uncomfortable. And how do you find and embody your sovereignty in
Mhm.
this chaos? And so
Yeah.
that is what I had to, I mean, I really had to reckon with
Yeah.
that. And how do I find my sovereignty? So yeah, I think looking back, it was still such a beautiful journey because I can see the steps that I had to take to fully embrace my authenticity.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, and it's really like the kind of journey it's like our all of our journey of awakening. And for some people also, like, I just want to say it might be that you're doing hair and you still want to do that and you're living your
Yeah.
purpose you're doing that. So it's not to say that, like, because we can kind of be a light and live our purpose in a lot of places, even some really unexpected that we might judge. But so it's not to say that, but it's like just answering that inner call of like, okay, like I'm supposed to shift gears, because I had that too, and it was super uncomfortable for me. I mean, I've had it a lot of times, right? I've gone through different numerous portals of change and what I call kind of dark nights of the soul of yeah, getting kind of letting myself be in that discomfort. And it's really interesting because it just feels like, again, like this is another huge energetic portal time for that. And like COVID kind of was one, and now it's like even more massive, where it's just inviting people to one, like if they're kind of out where we are, to just like dream bigger and like think, start to visualize and just ask the question all the time: what do I want to experience, what do I want to create, what do I want this world to be like? And then for people who, like, we know are really not comfortable with these old systems crumbling, watching these old systems crumble, and they are confused, it's like, just, to remember that even if, if you're listening to this and you're not having that experience, but a lot of people around you are, just remember, like, kind of what Jen just shared, because it's like, okay, that's the medicine, and you can't do it for anybody else, because a lot of people are going through it at the same time now. But a lot of us went through it kind of more on our own, and it is uncomfortable, but that's like the medicine, and that's the transmutation process that happens. So if we try to like buffer it too much for someone else, or try to like say, quote unquote, save them, or you can't. It's like everybody has to go through that. It's kind of that process of like, it's also like we're becoming crystalline. It's like the Christ aligned frequency and the Christ aligned body and the Christ aligned energy. And it's like kind of, it's that process of turning the coal to like a diamond. So it's
Yep.
important, even though it's like messy.
Well, yeah, it is messy because we can't, like, I I think I posted that today. Like, chaos can be messy in a bad sense or messy as in a good sense. And even if it's messy in what we would deem a bad sense, there are so many lessons in that. Like, there are so many lessons. And um like, I'll get vulnerable here, but my kids are gone for the week, and my husband and we homeschool, and it's great. We're with our family all the time.
Nice.
But we got into an argument, and it was like one of those arguments where you're like, I just want to forget this even happened. But it really brought up stuff that we just kind of didn't have time to look at or see with our kids around.
Right.
And it gave us the opportunity. So even in those moments where it is so freaking uncomfortable that you want to forget that it even happened, there actually are so many blessings. They are really opportunities for you to look at yourself and go, is this what I like? Is this what I want? Do I want to make changes? Like, what do I want? You know? And again, if we're moving from our carbon-based body, which is dense, like we're dense beings, and we're moving more into that crystalline. We talked about this too on our live, like our bodies are going to change. Like it's
Mhm.
chaos. So even though it's a good thing, our literal DNA, our genetics are changing and shifting. And so we cannot take where we are going. We cannot take the denseness of things, the dense way
Yeah.
we think, the dense emotions, like we are literally in a purifier, you know, and
Yes.
all the things that we experience. Like I've really been able to go, okay, these situations might suck, but what are the blessings? Like, what am I supposed to let go of? There's so much. It's basically like, I mean, that's what, when I channel, that's what my guide says. Celeste is like, you need
Mhm.
to learn to let go. And
Yeah.
that's like our thing. I think one of our biggest lessons, like, how do we let go and become sovereign?
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
people think that we become sovereign through control.
Right.
And it's really one
Oh,
to wrap your
yeah.
mind.
I just got chills. That's so huge because you can, if you, when you like what you just said, if you kind of look at anything through that lens, it's like, oh, okay, well, okay, then think of like, the inside, like being uncomfortable because a relationship that maybe is really comfortable, or you might really love the person, but it's not just quite right, and having to let that go. And trust that and trust the process that it's working out for the higher, both of you. Or like you can
Yeah.
turn it outward and like look at the government falling. It's like that is so uncomfortable for so many people, and helping them to go through this process, right? And that can look just wild. It's like, and I hear this conversation a lot. It's like, oh well, we need that. It would just be, again, it would just be chaos, or we're not. But that's, again, that's like not trusting our humanity. That's not trusting ourselves that we couldn't do it. We wouldn't be okay without essentially quasi parental government figure. It's like, but do we really need that? Is that true? It's a big conversation. It really relates to what you just said.
I think the rebels are leading the way. Because the rebels, I think, were a little bit faster in letting systems or things go, meaning you can't contain me. And so I really I do think we're like, they're like, what? You don't like let that shit go, you know? Or
You know,
like, yeah, right, exactly. And so it's almost like you want to rebel against all systems and ask, like, is this working for me? You know, and if it
yeah,
isn't, let it go. And I think
yeah,
it's scary because, again, it goes to show how deeply rooted we are in the belief of control equals comfort.
yeah. That's so
Um,
huge.
right? Control equals comfort. And
It's
I really like the work that I've been doing the last couple years with my guide Celeste is so much like sovereignty is such an energy. We aren't going to need so many of the systems we believe that we need. And there have been times where I'm like, well, how is this going to work? And I mean, she just says, you're not at the vibration yet where you can imagine it. And
right.
and I wasn't. And that was okay. But but I still, like, my soul resonated with it. My brain couldn't figure it out. I was like trying to fight it. And I don't know, like we said the other day, like I feel so grounded in what is to come that I don't really want to participate with people who are not on that wavelength because I almost want to say, can you take off the cap that you've been programmed with and put on your daydreamer cap and just go,
Yeah.
what if, what if,
What
what
if?
if, what if, you know?
It is that. It's totally that. And it's like kind of that moment, because that's kind of what I wrote in my Substack a little bit too. It's like, okay, it's time to just like let ourselves dream. And you're right that, some of us, and it's no one's better. It's like we're all equal, but like some of us have been just letting ourselves basically deprogramming for longer, just
Yeah.
asking these questions for longer, right? So like you're homeschooling your children. It's like it's going to be, yes, like you said, it's like the rebels. And I would say those are those of us who have already then even unconsciously or consciously unplugging from the program for a long time, or unplugging from these systems. And sometimes we just got bumped out of them. It doesn't, like some of the ways that I would say I kind of unclicked from the matrix. It's like I wasn't consciously choosing it, felt more like rejection, right? So sometimes, and then as I went along, now I can look back and be like, oh wow, that was a gift. That was protection. Let's say rejection is protection. That was protection. So I can see now how it was guiding me more to actually be to connect with that freedom frequency inside, or of that sovereignty, so that when these things crumbled, I would be more like, it's okay, I'm good no matter what happens. And I could have yeah, and I could have resisted that, but I feel really blessed that I'm someone who kind of flies, I'll fly by the seat of my pants. It'll feel really crazy and scary, but I'm like, I don't know. I just get this ping to do this, or that feels bad. I feel rejected, so I'll go here. And in the long term, like where we are now, I feel so blessed that I kind of just followed that guidance, because yeah, again, like I feel more aligned with what you're saying, those rebels who are like, well, we can already see we don't need these systems. Like I haven't had, health insurance for over 20 years. And people, I forget how kind of revolutionary of an idea that can be, because I've had people look at me like I am totally nuts when I've told them that, and more like they didn't even realize that was an option, kind of. And it's like that's just like one example, but like yeah, you homeschooling the kids, or I mean there's so many ways and little subtle things that we can do to kind of just like unplug, and then you realize like, oh, I didn't need that. I thought I did, but that was kind of a program. And then there's divine intervention. And then there's just different solutions that things pop up that, again, like you're saying, it's like we're not on that frequency yet. If we're not a vibrational match for it yet, it won't even occur to us. But then once, you unclick from it, then all of a sudden there's like a whole new world that pops up. You didn't see it before. So it's I mean, it's really cool. And I guess like what I'm saying is like we're those of us who are having this conversation, probably a lot of you here, it's like it feels like, okay, well, we're gonna hold that vibration and that frequency. We're gonna ground that for the collective right now, as many people are going through the uncomfortable parts of that unplugging, right? It's like
I mean, and I know it is uncomfortable because it was slightly uncomfortable for me, but I think I have a little bit more of a rebellious spirit. So if you're going to tell me that I have to do something, I'm most likely going to go in the opposite direction just because I'm a rebel at heart. I don't care if it's even in my best interest. I'm going to figure it out myself. And I think that's like those are the energies of sovereignty is and are you doing these so-called things because you really believe in them, you
Mhm.
know? And are you believing in them because you've been so programmed? You know, I talked to my dad a lot, my poor dad. I talked a little bit about it. My mom is very like here with us. And my dad, I kind of have to like bring him along, but we'll have these discussions and I'm like, yeah, but do you think that because you were programmed to think that? Like homeschool. He's like, well, your kids aren't like, I worry about them socializing. And I said, can I ask you a question? And he's like, okay. I said, well, you've had conversations with the kids plenty of times and you've seen them out in public with people. Are you worried about their social skills? And he's like, well, no, I guess not. They're both like very like approachable. And I said, so to me, that is your programming coming
Mhm.
out because you have been programmed to believe that homeschool is bad. They won't get a good enough education and they'll be weird and have
Right.
social issues. And he's like, well, I didn't think about it like that. And I said, well, thank God I'm here. Thank God I'm here to tell you, Dad.
There's other things, there's other ways. Yeah. Yeah, that's really beautiful example because it's exactly that. And we all have like it's not like you're saying it's a spiral staircase. So it's not like this process ends. I'm constantly having moments of like, oh, I didn't see that before. I didn't see that before. I've never asked myself this question about whatever it is. Like, do I actually need that? Um, it's really good to do that.
I mean, it really is. And like, I don't know why I feel guided to talk about this right now, but like so many of us, I really think we've been programmed to believe and to think that the power resides outside of us. Like there's
Mhm.
something that will save us, or there's something that has a better idea of how to help us, or um, really we've been disconnected from our intuition. And so even on my spiritual journey, that spiral, right? Like I started down here where I really worked with the archangels and Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael. And I remember working even with Archangel Michael, and he was like, hey, basically, by the way, all of the things that you're asking me to do, as in like outside of you, you have inside of you. It's
Mhm.
just something that you need to activate. And so actually, Archangel Michael was one of the ones who really started that, okay, oh God, I'm leveling up again. So
Mhm.
and it really was like a whole expansion of, oh my God, I don't need to ask anybody outside of myself. I
Mhm.
need to embrace the power that I have as a human being. I'm not lesser than any of them. I'm just as powerful. And I think that was like a really huge portal for me to walk through on that journey. And so when I was talking about the embodiment sessions, I work with Mary Magdalene closely. I love Magdalene, but that woman is the first to tell you that everything that you're searching for outward is already inside. And so these beautiful entities that we feel that we have to call on for protection or whatever. So now, like, Archangel Michael, please protect me in the car when I'm driving and traveling. I don't even do that anymore. I literally say, I am protected by the universal energy and my own power. And I envision this, this orb around us. That's
Mhm.
how powerful we are. And I don't know why I felt like I had to say that.
Oh, I got chills. I love that. No, it's so true because I feel like that's what's happening right now.
Yep.
That's like the greater invitation is we're meant to be stepping into that realization of who we really are, that we're all God's sparks of, source or God, and that we all have that power and that we're creator beings and we really need to claim it. Like all the uncomfortableness is to get us to like claim that and step into that because it's huge because then there are so many other when you get that, that means so many things about who we are and how we're being existing in the world. And it's just again, it's empowering. It's basically that sense of like I'm running the show, I'm deciding. And yeah, we handed that over for so long. And that's been like it's almost been it's like the biggest programs to me. It's like scarcity is a really big program. And also, but it really ties into that too, that what's the word hierarchy that we
Yep.
met like and that's what spirituality versus like religion is. It's like the religion program of we need to look outside, we need somebody else to come in and be an interpret translator between us and the universal energies. And like no, we don't we don't at
Yeah.
all.
I just saw this comedian the other day, and she was talking about how she's like, oh yeah, I was talking to people, and um she's like, oh yeah, I'm Christian, but she's Catholic. And they're like, oh no, oh no, and she's like, oh, we're not the same. But she was talking about growing up as Catholic. She's like, I had a whole list, a litany of saints that I had to go through before
Right.
I even got to Jesus. And it's so interesting how we've been so heavily programmed to constantly look outside of ourselves. And that is the biggest journey. I remember actually channeling with Celeste, my guide, and she actually, there were times I would disassociate. I had a really hard time. My body was stuck in fight, flight, and freeze. And
Mm,
so I would be doing my mediumship skills, but I was not grounded in my body. And Celeste would actually say, you need to stay in. So when I would go through a healing, I would
mhm,
go somewhere else. And
mm,
she would actually say, you need to be in the body. You need to feel your body. You need to focus on your breath and be here for this because it's so important for us as humans to be in our bodies. And so that's another reason, like the whole embodiment session is like, coming back to us, being in our body, not pushing our pain away, not pushing our trauma away, but our wounds, really
mm.
being able to see ourselves sink into our body while we hold that space, and then really just be authentically who we are. And I think we just have this whole idea of perfectionism and, oh, they're going to think I'm weird. And but I will say, as being the weird girl always, I've always been the weird girl. And I've not even fully let the weird girl out of the bag. I'm like, well, what? Like, what's the difference now? Like, I'm already called the weird girl. Like, just go for it,
Who
you know?
cares? Yeah, it's that I love that kind of, it's like in the thank God we're moving away from like the era of cancel culture and all that crap, right? But it's essentially that like saying of like once you've been canceled, you're free. It's like if they
Yeah.
already think you're crazy, it's very free. You can be who you are.
Yep.
Who cares? And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter anyway. It's none of our business what anybody else thinks, and it's really more of a reflection of them than us, because people who are aligned and they're focusing on their divine connection and their mission and their inspiration and their joy and happiness. They don't have time to be, tearing other people down anyway. So it's just, yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're not even really
crazy.
on that frequency, that's not. And what's interesting is like so that's the thing, when you're on your spiral journey, you're just, you're not in a frequency where you're going to really judge others' paths. You really can step
Right.
back and go, okay, but now it's different. Like if they're being hateful towards you, then maybe make the boundary of like, okay, I don't want to have this person in my life.
Definitely.
You can really step back and go, I know that this doesn't make sense, but if you actually are really connected spiritually, you'll understand that whatever experience it is actually for your highest good. And so this is
It's
every little thing is
yeah.
it's so detailed, and it is so part of this divine orchestration that
It's so true.
once you step into that, then you're just like, well, then I really don't have anything to worry about.
It's so true, because even that thing I was just talking about, which I went through, we've all kind of gone through the fire with that, especially if we're talking about
Yeah.
something that's not widely accepted, right? But yeah, I started to see those triggers as like if someone, had a problem with what I was saying, or maybe even their mean, it was like an invitation for me to clear that in my field. Because if I have a trigger to that, it means there's something for me to kind of heal or clear around that, because otherwise I would just feel neutral about it. So yeah, I think it's an invitation. It's again, everything is
It,
like an invitation to
it
expand, basically, if you look at it that way.
It's 100% an invitation. I know for me personally, like for so many things where I would get triggered, it came back to safety for me. Like it wasn't safe
Yeah.
for me to have my opinion. It wasn't safe for, and that goes with like we could have many past lives of, those types of wounds.
Oh
But,
yeah.
safety is such a big one for human beings. And right, like it's our biggest trigger, that and death. So so then I'd go, okay, well, what don't I feel safe about? Or why do I feel like I'm not allowed to really be me or have my own opinion? And so, yeah, like just those invitations, okay, this is what I'm learning. This is what I want to move towards. I want to really be able to just hold that frequency of, but this is my opinion. And I've also noticed like I don't always have to share my opinion.
Yeah.
I just hold the frequency. I just hold the frequency. And I will say, like, I'm in a group and we practice like magical things. But it does surprise me as to how many, like what we would maybe call spiritual leaders, don't hold that frequency. And
Mhm.
it's just, again, it was an invitation for me to say, okay, how do you want to be? I don't want to be like that. I want to be in the frequency of holding love. And, every time, especially this last time with it, being the presidency and all the things that we're going through, things get very heated. And I could really see where people would hold defenses and say that they're spiritual leaders. And that was surprising to me, where you could kind of see these, I want to say the humanness, right? Like we can really see each other's humanness.
Mhm.
But to me, like if you're really like a spiritual leader or a mentor, you're really standing back and allowing people to find their own way without infringing on or pushing your agenda or your opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's really I think that's only what resonates with me at this point is guides who are really allowing, kind of holding space and encouraging and asking questions to lead all individual, me, whoever, to yes, to step more into that authentic knowing and that connection with higher self or God source to yeah, to again like access that from inside rather than outsourcing again, because otherwise you're just creating a new kind of hierarchy. And I think the energetics are what we're stepping into. And if we want to call dissension the golden age, the Aquarian energy, even it's like that
The
stepping into that.
awakening. Yeah.
Yeah, awakening sovereignty where we're going inside. And it does again, it doesn't mean because I'll say sometimes people will also misinterpret that as like, oh, well, what about teachers and guides? It's like, well, there's a beautiful place for that. But it's what I think the place is for me, what resonates is exactly what you're talking about. Those that share their wisdom, but without a hierarchical overlay and without yeah, and just guiding to back to the inner knowing kind of. And there's many beautiful guides and teachers and leaders who do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think guides and teachers, or mentors, uh, like for me, I guess the way that I want to uh, maybe showcase that or be that is constantly saying, this is my method, this is what I do, but I implore you to find your
Yeah.
method, because
Yeah.
the universe, like the way I used to see it when I was a little girl was like, well, I remember when the Matrix came out and like it was like coding, where it was like 00011122222, like all these numbers. Like that's how I would see it when I was a little girl. And I think that there's just so many um variations. Like we're not all meant to work in one way.
Yeah. Or do the same thing. Yeah. And what's coming in for me is like, and I think I feel like I had a big conversation with maybe Honey around this before, but like we're seeing the disclosure in so many ways, right?
Yep.
So part of it is these hierarchical systems and disclosure of stuff that is yucky in religion and also spiritual groups that have been pretty big because most of the groups that were large were either created at a base level for our detriment or for control, or were infiltrated. And unfortunately, so there's a lot of a lot of yucky truths that are coming out in different spiritual communities. And I can see when faced with that, it's like, what do you do with that information? And I have had friends who started to get intuitive hits about that. It could be I don't know if I want to call anything out by name, but maybe a group that they were in, with a formal practice and a leadership and kind of a hierarchy. And it inspired them, and again, an uncomfortable journey, but to start to question that. And they didn't mean that they necessarily needed to throw it all out. So it doesn't necessarily, because that's kind of like can really propel you into, maybe it's, we'll just say maybe it's Catholicism, maybe it's Kundalini yoga, whatever it is. it doesn't mean that there aren't parts in that that are beautiful and can be high vibration, and maybe you want to keep those parts, but it's that like questioning and that going inward to have a dialogue with yourself to go like, oh, well, what parts do feel aligned still, or what parts do I want to step away from? And you get to decide, and it's really stepping into creating your own um truth around it. And you have, we decide, we have the final say on what feels
Resonant.
good, resonant, and what it's like time to let go. So I think that's so important because it's everything falls away. It's like they're even, we're seeing all of these, heroes falling, those that, this society has given us. There's a lot of social engineering that was tied in with that. And but we still get to kind of decide, like the Hollywood, there's pop music, whatever. And maybe a lot of the music turns out to be yucky, but maybe you want to keep some of it. There's going to be certain things I'm still going to keep, even if I know there's some weirdness there. It's like so in this era where everything is being exposed and crumbling, I just like to share that like you still get to decide, but again, you decide,
Yeah,
um
I think that's very important because I don't think we're meant to, to get rid of everything, as like you said with music and things like that, or movies, or like, okay, we can know two truths at one time. We can know what maybe really happened with these actors or whatever, but this was a staple of my childhood and it made me feel really good and really alive, or
right.
this song reminds me of whatever memory, and it makes me dance like a crazy woman every time I hear it. Because yeah, I agree with that 100%. Two things can be, well, more than two things can be true, but
Yeah,
it's
but it's
not like you don't want to throw the baby out with the
yeah.
bathwater,
And I think it can be overwhelming when you're starting this journey because you're like, what? That's corrupt too.
Yep.
It's like, oh my gosh, everything. And it's like, it's okay. It's okay. Just like, ground yourself and like, yes, it's just a process and we get to decide. But also I
I mean,
wanted to,
I definitely did that. I was like, oh my God, I
yeah,
can't listen to this music. I mean, for a while there, I was like not even listening to music because we've talked about our journeys of like, there are just some things that you can't unknow or unsee. And,
yeah.
um, but I was like, I had to shut it all off to see what I wanted to come back to.
Yeah, like a reset. I think that's
Yep.
super important because I've gone through the same period, a period of like almost like a cleansing of energies in every way. So you guys maybe you guys have already gone through this or you're feeling invited to, and it doesn't have to last forever because when I entered one of my last big period of that, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, is anything going to feel good again? Anybody or any whatever content, anything, because it was such a massive reset for my system. And then I realized looking back, it's like, oh, I was really shifting my frequency like so massively then. I needed to kind of like ground into that new energetic space. And then it totally was like, oh, I just decide what I want to let back in. No big deal.
Yeah,
But
I think like, I mean, because a lot of this stuff it kind of shatters realities, right? And I mean, that was like one of the biggest things that I got from Celeste was get very comfortable being uncomfortable. And
yeah,
so I really did that, and I still do that. I'll still ask myself, like, why do I need this to be true? Or why do I need to hold on to this? Like why, like that's like, I mean, those are big questions and those are like deep things. And that's part of
yeah,
my personality. So I go there very easily. But um,
it's important.
yeah, but then coming back to like, okay, but again, it's like that spiral, right? So like we're down here, we are living our lives the way we are. We kind of go through this, like, I want to say a part of the awakening, right? Where we're like, oh my God, the world is not what I thought it was.
Mhm.
And then it's like this detox. It's like, oh my God, what's good anymore? But you're shifting these energies where you're like, I am the good, right? Like
Mhm.
I want to be the good. I am the good. So I'm gonna like now come in and, you know, I think we can take darkness. Okay, it's kind of like this. Aleister Crowley is not my guy. He's not my guy. He's not my guy. I know what he's been up to. I've read his energy. That guy is dark, 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 dark. But Aleister Crowley created the Thoth deck,
Hmm.
the tarot deck. Well, that doesn't mean that's evil. You know, you can still take the
Yeah.
deck and use that for messages that are empowering and enlightening. And so I think we can take the darkness and we, the light, can change it. The
Yeah, that's a
darkness
really
just can't do this. The darkness can't do that, you know, it has to invert.
that's a really good example. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I learned that on my journey as well, because I started out,
Yeah.
looking at the occult, but and
Oh,
all the
I
things,
know.
right? So yeah,
I
we
know that's a
sound like
dark
we've been
one.
on a similar journey.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you before, I wanted to have time to ask you this because I feel like you'd be really great to speak to this point. So as like the frequency is shifting right now, so many people are I just even more people are starting to notice now because they're feeling it in their body and they're like, okay, maybe there's something to this frequency shift. Maybe this is real. And I'm just noticing that more and more people are having just like these great awakenings to their gifts, like quite suddenly. So I have a friend who he just kind of texted me. I had to talk to him in a couple weeks or month or whatever, and he was like, just kind of casually, so I'm talking to my ancestors now, and this isn't someone I expected this message from, and we don't necessarily talk on that level. And of course, I was thrilled. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So I'm curious if you have any guidance because, yes, if for people that their gifts are just coming online and they're popping in, and that might be quite jarring. I mean, I think he was excited and felt good about it, but I'm just curious if you have anything you want to share from your experience with that, or just for because I'm imagining this is going to be happening really for all of us in time and some now. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, that's what I have channeled is that's how it was thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago was we
Mhm.
actually like we might have our different species or different races of extraterrestrials, like we had different languages, but we could communicate telepathically. So
Right.
you didn't really need language if you know didn't want to use it. And so yes, I believe as we like people will say to me, "Oh, I don't have those abilities." Actually, yes, everybody has the ability that I have. Every single person. Now it might show up differently for you, right? Like your way isn't going to be my way. But yes, I agree. We'll have more telepathic abilities. We'll be more sensitive. I think we're even going to be able to feel people way faster, meaning their aura. Like we'll be able to go, "Oh, I don't know if I connect with you," right?
Mhm.
Um, the biggest thing I can say is when you are tapping in and those skills are turning on is what ways can you, one, stay in the body? So grounding,
Mhm.
um, maybe even working out, like be comfortable being in your body. Like if you have pain, like sink into it, ask what's going on there, right? Like be in the body, but also be very clear of your channel. So what kind of mood are you in?
Mhm.
What, right? Like I think that's going to, because we're still working through so many dense emotions, right? Like we're still working through lots of grief and anger, frustration, right? And so what are you channeling, right? I don't know if I necessarily feel so much of the negativity anymore, but
I don't feel like
yeah,
I feel like and I don't know how I would language it, so I'm gonna, share what my friend Honey would share. She
yeah.
shared that we've moved into the fifth density already. And so unless we essentially really work hard to call it in, like focus on something negative, like that those entities or that lower density is not actually we're not actually aligned with that anymore. All of us.
I feel that. I feel like this is maybe more like your maybe inner demons, like what I would call that, right? So it's not
Yeah,
really
shadows.
like
Mhm.
yeah, like the external ones. These are like, these might be the things that you carry within you. So I would just like pay attention to like what kind of mood you're in. And I would also say like meditate. If you're interested in getting those, Listen, I'm a mom of two. We homeschool. I'm home all the time. I don't have time to meditate for 30 minutes. On a perfect day, yeah, but not always. So meditate for 5 minutes, like just focusing on like clearing your mind. Like I close my eyes and I literally just focus where my third eye would be and hold an intention of I'm clearing way for connection with my highest good or connection with my higher self or whatever you're, whatever you're feeling called to connect to. But I think that would be honestly the best. And work on your wounds, like what's coming up, what
Yeah.
like that really, like you'll be so much more clear if you know and understand who you are. I think that's so important right now because we are still clearing all of us are clearing, maybe on different levels, but we're all clearing a lot of the gunk that we've
Yeah.
did.
Totally. Yeah, that. Thank you for sharing that. That's so beautiful. And I think that's really helpful and that really resonates. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jen. This was so fun. We'll have to do this again. I love talking with you and this was such a beautiful conversation. So yeah, have to do it again. And just thank you so much for joining
I
me.
would love to do it again, and I'd love to like talk about even more specific topics and all kinds of
Yeah.
things. So thank you so much for having me on. I love speaking with you, and I really think there's so many good things coming, and I feel alive when I speak with you. And like you, it's hard to find those gems in the rough, right? Those diamonds in the rough where you can be like, oh my God, you're like me too.
Yeah, I mean, just like everybody, we're calling, yeah, I'm calling this
We're
in more.
calling it
We're
in.
calling it in more. And it's like connection with, yeah, our soul tribe, our soul family who, it's just easy to be with and easy to have these open conversations with. So yeah, I appreciate you for the
I
same.
just feel so much magic. Like
Me too.
like you always say, like you're like, this is a time to celebrate. But like when you're with people who are in alignment, like you can really feel the buzz. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, what we have coming. If this is just a taste of it, like
So
watch
true.
out.
Watch out. It's like beyond. Yes, exactly. Because I've had visions about this time. I know you have too. And
Yep.
it's so high frequency. For one of the visions for years, I would tune into it and remember it or read what I wrote about it, and I would cry every time. And I was that my frequency was it's been trying to reach the frequency of where we're going, basically. That it's so expansive.
Yes.
That's we're on this huge, just like upward spiral to get there. Yeah, but it's so beautiful, you guys. It really, really, really is. And again, yeah, the more that you can spend time with those on the wavelength and call in your soul family, the more it's just fun and joyful and exciting to talk about it all. So yeah.
Yep. I feel the same.
Yes,
I
thank
feel the
you.
same. Thank you so much for having me. Sorry, the sun is like right here. So I'm
No,
like,
I love it. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, thank you. And thank you guys for joining us. And yeah, we'll do more of these. I love it.
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye, you guys.